The security guard looked at his faded badge and laughed. "Listen, old man, this is the Pentagon, not a nursing home." But when they ran his clearance code through the system that afternoon, the computer screen went black. Then red. Then started displaying files that weren't supposed to exist. He had mopped the same floors for 15 years. Invisible. Ignored. Just another old man pushing a cart through the Pentagon's corridors at 6 a.m., wearing a faded uniform that security guards barely glanced at anymore. But this Tuesday morning in September would be different. This morning, Vincent Park would discover that some secrets are too dangerous to stay buried forever. And some identities are protected by levels that can destroy careers with a single phone call. What happened between 5:47 a.m. and 1:47 p.m., exactly 8 hours, would change everything he thought he knew about the building he had cleaned for over a decade. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison was 3 weeks new to Pentagon security detail. Fresh from his third deployment in Afghanistan, sharp-eyed from 2 years of checkpoint duty in Kabul, and determined to prove himself worthy of his assignment to America's most secure military facility. When the old janitor approached his checkpoint at 5:47 a.m., Jake did what veteran guards had stopped doing years ago after countless routine interactions with the same maintenance staff. He looked. Really looked. The ID badge was worn smooth from years of handling. The photo showed a man 20 years younger with harder features. And those hands pushing the cleaning cart. Those weren't the hands of someone who had spent his entire adult life cleaning office buildings and emptying trash cans. "Sir, new biometric security protocols require fingerprint verification for all personnel entering sensitive areas," Jake said, gesturing toward the recently installed scanner that had been causing minor delays throughout the facility for the past month. The old man hesitated. Just for a second. But in that single second of hesitation, Jake saw something that made his combat-trained instincts scream warnings. The way the man's eyes swept all available exits. The way his weight shifted to the balls of his feet. The way his hands positioned themselves for instant defensive movement. The way his entire body language transformed from submissive service worker to something else entirely. This wasn't a janitor approaching a routine security checkpoint. This was a trained operator assessing potential threats and calculating response options. But what Jake didn't know was that Vincent Park had been dreading this moment for 6 months. Ever since the Pentagon had announced new biometric security measures that would require updated clearance verification for every person with facility access. Vincent had spent those 6 months hoping his 15-year routine would somehow get him through the transition period without triggering the security protocols that protected his real identity. Because Vincent Park wasn't really a janitor at all. He was something much more dangerous and much more valuable to American national security than anyone in the building realized. Vincent placed his weathered finger on the scanner, knowing that what happened next would either confirm his cover or expose secrets that had been protected at presidential levels for over 2 decades. The machine hummed. 1 second passed. Then 3, then 5, then 10. Jake had never seen the scanner take longer than 3 seconds to process anyone's fingerprint. But this wasn't processing like a normal scan. The screen flickered. Text scrolled rapidly across the display. Too fast for Jake to read, but he caught fragments that made his blood run cold. Top secret, executive order, special activities division, presidential authorization required. Then the screen went completely black. Dead black. Not even a cursor or loading icon. For 30 seconds, that felt like 30 minutes, Both men stared at the blank display. Then suddenly, without warning, the screen turned blood red and began displaying file names that contained security levels Jake had never seen before. Lazarus Protocol, Deep Cover Assets, Eyes Only Access, Section 841, Authorizations. "Step back from the scanner, sir," Jake commanded, his right hand moving toward his sidearm while his left reached for his radio. But Vincent didn't look scared or confused like most people would when faced with a security malfunction. Instead, he looked calculating, like someone rapidly processing multiple scenarios and selecting the best response strategy. "Sergeant," Vincent said quietly, "I strongly suggest you call your immediate supervisor. Right now. And when you make that call, tell them these words: 'We have a Lazarus Protocol activation at Checkpoint Alpha 7. Don't add anything else. Don't ask questions. Just relay those words and wait for instructions.'" Jake had never heard the term Lazarus Protocol before, despite extensive security briefings when he was assigned to Pentagon duty. But something about the way Vincent said those words, with absolute authority and zero uncertainty, like someone accustomed to giving orders that moved military assets across continents, made him reach for his radio. "Control, this is Morrison at Alpha 7. I need a supervisor here immediately. We have what the subject describes as a Lazarus Protocol activation." The response was unlike anything Jake had experienced during his 3 weeks of Pentagon security duty. Instead of the usual acknowledgement and estimated arrival time, the radio went completely silent. Not static. Not hold music. Complete radio silence. Then a voice Jake had never heard before came through on a channel he didn't know existed. "Secure Checkpoint Alpha 7. No personnel approach that location until Colonel Hayes arrives. Morrison, whatever you think you understand about the next 30 minutes, classify it above your current authorization level. And Morrison, you're about to learn things that will change your entire understanding of how security works in this facility." But here's what Jake didn't know, what he couldn't have known despite his military intelligence training and combat experience. Vincent Park wasn't just any maintenance worker who happened to have unusual security clearances. He was Patient Zero in a program so deeply protected that most presidents forgot it existed after leaving office. A program that had been systematically placing former Special Activities Division operatives in maintenance and support positions throughout sensitive government facilities since the early 1990s. Not as employees recovering from combat injuries, not as veterans transitioning to civilian careers, as human intelligence gathering and counter-surveillance systems with access that even most general officers couldn't imagine. Colonel Sarah Hayes arrived at Checkpoint Alpha 7 within 90 seconds of Jake's radio call. Impossibly fast, unless she had been monitoring the situation from nearby or had been expecting this type of incident. One look at Vincent standing calmly beside the security checkpoint. One glance at the blood-red computer screen still displaying file references. One assessment of Jake's confused and increasingly concerned expression. And her face went pale, with what looked like a mixture of professional concern and personal recognition. "Mr. Park," she said, her voice carrying the carefully controlled tone of someone managing a situation that could have serious consequences. "We need to discuss this security anomaly in a controlled environment. Sergeant Morrison, you're coming with us. And from this moment forward, everything you see, hear, or learn is beyond your current security clearance and will remain so for the duration of your military career and beyond." They moved through corridors that Jake had never seen during his facility orientation, using key cards that accessed elevators he didn't know existed. Arriving at Security Office D9, a room that wasn't marked on any Pentagon floor plan and didn't appear in any facility directory. No windows, soundproofed walls, recording equipment that looked more advanced than anything Jake had seen in military intelligence facilities in Afghanistan, and security measures that included multiple layers of encryption, signal jamming, and biometric access controls that required authorization from at least 3 different agencies. Colonel Hayes activated what appeared to be 6 different security protocols before speaking again, each one requiring separate biometric verification and codes that she entered from memory. "Vincent, your scheduled biometric update wasn't supposed to happen until next month. What triggered the early security scan?" Vincent smiled, and Jake realized he had never seen the maintenance worker smile before during their brief morning interactions over the past 3 weeks. It wasn't the polite, deferential expression of a service worker trying to avoid attracting attention. It was the cold, calculating smile of someone who had survived situations that would have killed most people and was now figuring out the best way to manage a potentially dangerous information leak. "New security protocols, Sarah," Vincent replied, and Jake noticed that the man's entire speaking pattern had changed. Gone was the slight accent and hesitant delivery that had characterized his previous interactions with Pentagon security personnel. In its place was the precise, confident articulation of someone accustomed to briefing senior military officials on sensitive operations. "Your enthusiastic young sergeant here was following updated procedures that haven't been adjusted to account for personnel like me. Personnel with special clearances that exist outside standard military command structures." "Personnel like you," Jake interrupted, his confusion overriding military protocol and chain of command respect. Jake swallowed hard, processing what he was hearing. "Sir, with all due respect, I have no idea what's happening here, or why a routine biometric scan has triggered this level of security response." Colonel Hayes and Vincent exchanged a look that contained years of shared knowledge, understanding, and what appeared to be genuine concern about how much sensitive information they were about to reveal to someone who hadn't been properly prepared for it. "Sergeant Morrison," Colonel Hayes said, settling into a chair across from Jake and adopting the serious expression that senior officers used when delivering information that would change a soldier's understanding of military operations. "What I'm about to tell you is going to completely transform your perception of how security works in facilities like this. And more importantly, it's going to make you a permanent part of a program that operates outside normal military channels." Vincent leaned forward, his maintenance uniform somehow looking completely different now. Less like work clothes worn by someone invisible to the Pentagon's power structure, and more like the perfect cover for someone who needed unrestricted access to America's most sensitive military planning facilities. "Sergeant, 23 years ago, I was medically retired from the CIA's Special Activities Division after sustaining severe traumatic brain injury and multiple other injuries during a mission in Syria that officially never happened." Vincent paused, watching Jake's reaction carefully. Jake's eyebrows shot up. "CIA," he whispered. "The Pentagon offered me this janitorial position not as a rehabilitation program or transition to civilian employment, but as continued intelligence service to the United States." Vincent continued, his voice steady and matter-of-fact. "I'm not a maintenance worker who happens to clean sensitive areas. I'm a counterintelligence operative who uses janitorial access to monitor security threats, gather intelligence on personnel with access, and ensure that sensitive military discussions remain secure from hostile intelligence services." The words hit Jake like physical blows, each revelation more shocking than the last. For 3 weeks, he had been nodding politely to one of the most dangerous and highly trained intelligence operatives in the entire Pentagon. A former special operations soldier whose current job was to identify and neutralize security threats from inside America's most secure military facility, while maintaining a cover so perfect that thousands of Pentagon personnel had never suspected his true identity or mission. Jake's jaw dropped slightly as he tried to process this information. "But sir," Jake said, struggling to process what he was learning, "your security clearance triggered alerts that indicated you were potentially a significant security risk. The scanner identified you as someone whose background required investigation." Vincent's smile broadened, and Jake realized that what he had interpreted as a security system malfunction had been the system working as designed. "That's the point, Sergeant," Colonel Hayes interjected. "Vincent's security clearance is at levels that require direct presidential authorization to access. When your biometric scanner attempted to verify his identity, it triggered protection protocols designed to safeguard ongoing operations and prevent unauthorized personnel from accessing information that could compromise national security. The red screen wasn't a security alert indicating a potential threat. It was a warning that you had just attempted to access information that exists above your current authorization level." Vincent stood and walked to the room's single small window that looked out over the Pentagon's central courtyard, where military personnel moved between buildings with the purposeful efficiency that characterized America's military headquarters. "Sergeant, for 15 years I've been conducting counterintelligence operations that most people in this building will never know about." Vincent's voice carried the weight of accumulated experience and responsibility. Monitoring personnel with access to sensitive information for signs of potential compromise, identifying behavioral changes that might indicate foreign intelligence recruitment attempts, tracking communication patterns that could suggest unauthorized information sharing, and ensuring that conversations between senior military officials, policymakers, and intelligence personnel remain secure from hostile intelligence services that are constantly attempting to penetrate American military planning processes. Jake's mind raced through 3 weeks of casual interactions with the quiet janitor who had always seemed to be cleaning nearby during important security briefings, who had been emptying trash cans in offices where documents were regularly visible, who had been present in corridors when sensitive conversations were taking place between senior military officials. Every morning greeting, every polite nod, every moment when Vincent had seemed like just another invisible support worker maintaining the facility. All of it had been cover for intelligence operations that Jake was only now beginning to understand. Jake shook his head slowly, trying to grasp the full implications. "How many others are there like you throughout the Pentagon?" Jake asked, though he suspected this question was venturing into territory that might be above his ability to know. The question hung in the air like an unexploded bomb, carrying implications that extended far beyond Vincent's individual case and suggested a security architecture that operated completely outside official military structures. Vincent and Colonel Hayes exchanged another look, this one carrying warnings and calculations that Jake could feel but not interpret. "That information is far beyond your current authorization level, Sergeant," Vincent replied. "But I will tell you this much. Pentagon security involves multiple layers of protection that most personnel, including most general officers, are never cleared to know about. What you've discovered today is just one small part of a security system that has been protecting American military operations for decades." Colonel Hayes activated her secure communication system and dialed a number that she knew from memory rather than any written directory. "This is Hayes. Authentication code, Delta 779 Alpha. I have a security situation that requires guidance and authorization for information disclosure." She listened for several seconds to instructions that Jake couldn't hear, then looked at Jake with an expression that suggested his military career was about to change dramatically. Sergeant Morrison, you're about to speak with someone from the Defense Intelligence Agency. This conversation will determine your immediate future, she said, then handed the phone to him. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and carried authority that made Jake straighten his posture instinctively. Sergeant Morrison, this is Colonel David Chen, Operations Coordinator for the Defense Intelligence Agency. I need to brief you on a situation that has significant national security implications. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Sir, I'm not sure I understand what I've stumbled into, Jake replied, his voice slightly strained with tension. What you've discovered is a counterintelligence asset operating under special protocols established following the September 11th attacks. Vincent Park is operating under direct authorization as part of a program designed to protect this facility and its personnel from threats that exist both inside and outside our normal security perimeters. His presence at the Pentagon is not only authorized, but essential to ongoing national security operations. Jake felt as if the foundation of everything he thought he knew about military security had shifted beneath his feet. Sir, I don't understand why this information wasn't included in any security briefings or personnel orientation materials when I was assigned to Pentagon duty. Colonel Chen's response was immediate and revealed the complexity that Jake was only beginning to understand. Because the effectiveness of operatives like Vincent depends entirely on their invisibility, Sergeant. The moment their true role becomes widely known throughout the facility, they become targets for hostile intelligence services, and their value is permanently compromised. Their ability to gather intelligence and identify security threats depends on other personnel treating them as invisible support staff, rather than recognizing them as highly trained counterintelligence operatives with access to sensitive information and authorities that exceed most military officers. What are my specific instructions regarding this situation, sir? Jake asked, though he suspected that his life and military career had just become infinitely more complicated, and that he was about to become involved in operations that existed outside normal military command structures. You will sign non-disclosure agreements that are protected at the highest possible levels and carry criminal penalties under federal espionage statutes. You will update security protocols to recognize Vincent's biometric signature without triggering alerts or requiring additional verification. And you will be reassigned to specialized duties that take advantage of your demonstrated attention to detail and your ability to identify security anomalies. Your discovery of this situation, while initially problematic, confirms that our security screening procedures are functioning as intended and that you possess skills that make you suitable for advancement to more sensitive security positions. Colonel Chen paused, and Jake could hear papers rustling in the background. Sergeant, you'll be speaking with General Kane within the hour. He oversees this particular program and wants to brief you personally on the larger scope of what you've discovered. Until then, remain in Security Office D9 with Colonel Hayes and Mr. Park. The line went dead. Jake handed the phone back to Colonel Hayes, who was already preparing documentation that looked far more official and legally binding than standard military paperwork. Multiple signature pages, witness requirements, legal warnings about criminal prosecution for unauthorized disclosure, and markings that Jake had never seen before, indicating security levels that apparently existed above the standard military clearance system. Sergeant Morrison, welcome to a level of Pentagon security that doesn't appear in any charts, facility directories, or official military documentation, Colonel Hayes said, as Jake signed documents that would legally bind him to secrecy for the rest of his life. You've just learned that some of the most effective counterintelligence operations in American military history involve personnel who are hiding in plain sight, conducting missions that most people in this building will never know about, and protecting national security through methods that combine traditional intelligence techniques with unprecedented access to facilities and personnel. Vincent returned to the conversation, but now Jake could see him for what he really was. Not an elderly maintenance worker approaching retirement, but a highly trained intelligence operative whose cover identity was so carefully constructed and perfectly maintained that it had successfully fooled thousands of Pentagon personnel for 15 years, while allowing him to conduct counterintelligence operations that were vital to national security. "Sergeant, the traumatic brain injury that ended my field operations didn't affect my ability to analyze security threats, monitor human behavior patterns, process multiple streams of intelligence information, or protect military assets," Vincent explained, his voice carrying both professional pride and personal acceptance of his limitations. "If anything, it enhanced my skills, improved my patience for long-term surveillance operations, and gave me the kind of perspective that serves this particular assignment well. I can no longer function effectively in high-speed combat environments, but I can identify potential security threats, foreign intelligence recruitment attempts, and information security breaches better than most people who have never been injured." Jake nodded slowly, trying to absorb everything he had learned in the past hour. As they prepared to leave the security office, Vincent paused at the door and turned back to Jake, with an expression that combined assessment with what appeared to be professional interest. "Sergeant Morrison, your military service record in Afghanistan demonstrates the kind of combat experience and threat assessment capabilities that make soldiers effective in unconventional security roles. Colonel Hayes will be discussing potential reassignment opportunities that might be of professional interest to you." Jake realized that his discovery of Vincent's true identity wasn't just a security incident that required damage control. It was a recruitment opportunity for involvement in intelligence operations that existed outside normal military career paths. "Sir, are you suggesting that there are positions available for military personnel like me in programs similar to yours?" Vincent's smile returned, and this time it seemed genuinely warm rather than coldly analytical. "The Pentagon's security requirements are constantly evolving in response to new threats, Sergeant. And soldiers with your background, your demonstrated skills, and your ability to identify anomalies that other personnel might miss are always in demand for specialized assignments that serve national security interests in ways that most military personnel never have opportunities to experience." They returned Vincent's cleaning supplies and updated his biometric profile to prevent future scanning incidents that could compromise his cover or expose his real identity to unauthorized personnel. But as Jake watched the former Special Activities Division operative walk back toward his assigned cleaning areas, he understood that nothing about Pentagon security was what it appeared to be on the surface. Throughout the rest of the morning, from approximately 8 a.m. as they completed the security office procedures, Vincent resumed his custodial duties with the same invisible efficiency that had characterized his work for 15 years and had allowed him to conduct counterintelligence operations without anyone suspecting his true role or capabilities. But now Jake knew that those duties included monitoring briefings for security anomalies, tracking personnel behavior for signs of potential foreign intelligence recruitment or compromise, and maintaining communications with other embedded operatives who formed an invisible protection network around America's most sensitive military operations and policy-making processes. At 8:30 a.m., Vincent began preparing conference room D15 for an intelligence briefing involving senior officials from multiple agencies, a routine assignment that he had been performing several times per week for 15 years. Jake watched from security monitoring stations as the former operative arranged seating and sanitized surfaces, while listening to pre-briefing conversations that revealed details about ongoing intelligence missions in Eastern Europe, counterintelligence efforts targeting Russian military technology acquisition programs, and diplomatic initiatives designed to prevent regional conflicts from escalating into broader international crises. The military and intelligence officials entering the conference room saw what they had always seen during hundreds of similar briefings: an invisible maintenance worker performing routine custodial duties that allowed the real business of national security to proceed without interruption. What they didn't realize was that Vincent was analyzing every word they spoke for potential security implications, monitoring their behavior and communication patterns for signs of possible foreign intelligence recruitment or information compromise, and maintaining the kind of situational awareness that was necessary to identify and respond to security threats before they could affect ongoing military operations or intelligence activities. During the briefing, which lasted from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., Vincent continued his cleaning duties with practiced efficiency while processing information about Chinese cyber warfare capabilities targeting American defense contractors, Iranian nuclear program developments that threatened regional stability, North Korean missile technology advances that posed direct threats to American allies, and Russian military activities near NATO borders that required coordinated international responses. Each piece of intelligence represented potential targets for hostile intelligence services, and Vincent's role involved ensuring that discussion of these topics remained secure from foreign intelligence penetration. Jake's new understanding of Pentagon security extended far beyond Vincent's individual case and began revealing details that had been completely invisible during his first 3 weeks of facility duty. He started noticing the way certain maintenance workers moved through the facility with unusual situational awareness. The subtle communications between custodial staff that seemed more advanced and coordinated than typical workplace interactions. The fact that some cleaning schedules aligned perfectly with meeting times and sensitive briefing periods. And the realization that personnel he had dismissed as invisible support staff were conducting intelligence operations that were vital to national security. By noon, exactly 6 hours and 13 minutes into what would become the most transformative day of Jake's military career, Vincent had completed his official maintenance duties and begun conducting discrete security assessments throughout different areas of the Pentagon facility. His custodial credentials provided virtually unrestricted access to every area of the building, allowing him to monitor security systems for potential vulnerabilities, assess personnel behavior for signs of security risks, and identify potential threats that might be exploited by hostile intelligence operations or foreign agents operating within the facility. Jake observed through security camera systems as Vincent documented several concerning patterns that required immediate attention and investigation. A civilian contractor in the Information Technology Department was accessing computer files outside his authorized scope, a pattern that could indicate either procedural violations that required administrative correction or deliberate intelligence gathering for foreign intelligence services. A senior policy advisor in the International Affairs section was exhibiting stress indicators, including increased alcohol consumption, financial pressures, and longer working hours that created vulnerability to foreign intelligence recruitment approaches. These observations became coded intelligence reports that were transmitted through encrypted communication channels that existed entirely outside standard Pentagon communication systems and normal military command structures. Vincent's intelligence assessments would trigger surveillance operations, background investigations, and security reviews conducted by specialized agencies whose existence wasn't acknowledged in official Pentagon structures and whose personnel didn't appear in standard military directories. The afternoon brought new challenges when Vincent was assigned to clean offices in the strategic planning section, where senior military planners were conducting detailed discussions about naval operations in the South China Sea, troop deployment strategies for European NATO installations, and intelligence sharing protocols with allied nations in the Pacific Theater. Jake monitored these activities while learning that Vincent's presence during these sensitive discussions wasn't coincidental. It was carefully orchestrated to provide counterintelligence coverage for America's most critical military planning processes. Vincent overheard planning conversations that revealed specific details about submarine deployments, aircraft carrier positioning, joint training exercises with allied forces, and contingency plans for potential military conflicts in multiple theaters of operation. Information that, if compromised by hostile intelligence services, could provide enemy forces with tactical advantages in potential conflict scenarios, and could seriously affect America's strategic relationships with allies and partners throughout the world. During these strategic planning duties, Vincent identified a senior military planner whose behavior patterns suggested possible vulnerability to foreign intelligence recruitment pressure. The official's stress levels, communication patterns, financial concerns, and interaction with colleagues created a behavioral profile of someone who might be susceptible to intelligence operations designed to penetrate American military planning processes and gain access to strategic information. Jake watched Vincent document this assessment while maintaining perfect custodial cover that allowed him to continue monitoring sensitive conversations without attracting attention from personnel who were discussing some of America's most closely guarded military secrets. This was the reality of the intelligence program that Jake was being recruited into, protecting national security through methods that combined traditional espionage techniques with unprecedented access to information, sensitive facilities, and senior personnel. At exactly 1:30 p.m., 17 minutes before the completion of the 8-hour time frame that had begun with a routine security check, Jake's secure phone rang. The voice on the other end carried the unmistakable authority of someone very high in the military command structure, someone accustomed to making decisions that affected global security operations and international military policy. "Sergeant Morrison, this is General Robert Kane, Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. What I'm about to tell you is protected under the Espionage Act and multiple other federal statutes. Vincent Park is operating under my direct personal authorization as part of a counterintelligence program that was established under executive order following the September 11th attacks. His presence at the Pentagon is not only authorized, but essential to ongoing national security operations that protect this facility and its personnel from threats that exist both inside and outside our normal security perimeters." Jake felt as if the foundation of everything he thought he knew about military security had shifted beneath his feet. The general's voice commanded immediate attention and respect, and Jake found himself standing at attention even though the conversation was taking place over a secure telephone line. "Sir, I don't understand why this information wasn't included in any security briefings or personnel orientation materials when I was assigned to Pentagon duty," Jake said, his voice carrying both confusion and the respect due to a senior general officer. General Kane's response was immediate and revealed the complexity that Jake was only beginning to understand. "Because the effectiveness of operatives like Vincent depends entirely on their invisibility, Sergeant. The moment their true role becomes widely known throughout the facility, they become targets for hostile intelligence services, and their value is permanently compromised. Their ability to gather intelligence and identify security threats depends on other personnel treating them as invisible support staff, rather than recognizing them as highly trained counterintelligence operatives with access to sensitive information and authorities that exceed most military officers." "What are my specific instructions regarding this situation, sir?" Jake asked, though he suspected that his life and military career had just become infinitely more complicated, and that he was about to become involved in operations that existed outside normal military command structures. "You will sign non-disclosure agreements that are protected at the highest possible levels and carry criminal penalties under federal espionage statutes. You will update security protocols to recognize Vincent's biometric signature without triggering alerts or requiring additional verification, and you will be reassigned to specialized duties that take advantage of your demonstrated attention to detail and your ability to identify security anomalies. Your discovery of this situation, while initially problematic, confirms that our security screening procedures are functioning as intended and that you possess skills that make you suitable for advancement to more sensitive security positions. The line went dead at exactly 1:47 p.m., completing the 8-hour time frame that had transformed Jake's understanding of Pentagon security and his own military career trajectory. Jake handed the phone back to Colonel Hayes, who had been monitoring the conversation and was already preparing additional documentation related to his new assignment and security clearances. As the workday concluded at exactly 1:47 p.m., completing the precise 8-hour time frame that had begun with what seemed like a routine security check, Vincent completed his visible maintenance duties and submitted routine custodial reports that documented his official activities throughout the Pentagon facility. But his real daily intelligence report was transmitted to General Kane's office through encrypted communication channels that existed entirely outside standard Pentagon communication systems and normal military command structures, providing detailed assessments of security threats, personnel vulnerabilities, and potential intelligence compromises that required immediate attention. That intelligence report included threat assessments based on behavioral observations, personnel vulnerability analysis derived from stress indicators and personal circumstances, security system vulnerability, identification through direct facility access, and specific recommendations for preventing potential compromises of ongoing military operations and intelligence activities. It also included Vincent's professional evaluation of Jake's performance during the morning's security incident and his assessment of Jake's potential suitability for recruitment into specialized counterintelligence operations. Jake's reassignment to security duties came through official military channels the following morning, transfer to a specialized intelligence program that would provide him with advanced training in surveillance techniques, behavioral analysis methods, threat assessment procedures, and the security protocols that were necessary for conducting unconventional intelligence operations within sensitive government facilities without compromising ongoing missions or exposing activities to hostile intelligence services. Vincent's final extended conversation with Jake revealed the full scope of his impact during 15 years of Pentagon counterintelligence service. 47 separate intelligence threats identified and neutralized before they could compromise ongoing operations. 31 serious security breaches prevented through early detection and intervention. Intelligence information provided that had protected active military operations in 9 different countries and had prevented the exposure of American intelligence assets who were operating in hostile territories. None of this success appeared in official military reports or public recognition, because acknowledging such activities would compromise the effectiveness of the program and would expose methods that needed to remain protected for national security reasons. As Vincent prepared for another day of invisible intelligence service, Jake understood that he was witnessing something extraordinary. A security and intelligence program so advanced and so carefully designed that it could operate successfully within America's most secure military facility for decades without most personnel ever knowing it existed. Former Special Operations soldiers and intelligence operatives continuing their service to America through completely different methods, protecting national security through techniques that combined military expertise with unprecedented access to sensitive environments and personnel. The Pentagon's morning routine continued as it had for years, with no visible indication that anything had changed. Generals reviewed intelligence briefings and made strategic decisions that would affect military operations around the world. Policymakers shaped America's responses to emerging international threats and developing global crises. Intelligence analysts processed information that would determine America's strategic position in an increasingly complex and dangerous world. And in the corridors connecting all of these centers of power and decision-making, invisible guardians continued ensuring that the secrets discussed in those rooms never reached America's enemies or compromised ongoing operations that were protecting American interests and American lives. Because some warriors never retire from their basic duty to defend America and protect American interests. They simply change uniforms, adapt their methods to meet evolving threats, and continue serving the nation through different approaches that combine their military experience with new capabilities and new access to intelligence opportunities. They maintain constant vigilance against threats that most people will never know existed, conducting missions that will never be publicly acknowledged, and protecting freedoms that everyone takes for granted through service that remains essential to national security, even though it operates completely outside public recognition or official acknowledgement. Vincent Park returned to his cleaning cart, adjusted his faded maintenance uniform, and disappeared once again into the invisible world of Pentagon support personnel and service workers. But now Jake Morrison knew the truth that very few people would ever be cleared to learn: that America's most effective counterintelligence operations often involve people who appear completely ordinary and unremarkable, who conduct their missions while remaining invisible to the very people they are protecting, and who serve their country through methods that are so advanced and so carefully designed that they can operate successfully for decades without compromising their effectiveness or exposing their true identity and purpose. Tomorrow would bring new intelligence threats to assess and neutralize, new security vulnerabilities to monitor and protect, new opportunities to safeguard American interests through methods that would never appear in official military records or public recognition ceremonies. And both Vincent and Jake would meet those challenges with the quiet professionalism, excellence, and unwavering commitment to national security that had always characterized their service in missions, whose success would be measured not by public recognition or career advancement, but by the attacks that never happened, the secrets that remained secure, and the American lives that continued to be protected by operations that officially never existed.